Now, the _app.js file is not the only special Next.js file which allows us to set application-wide settings. There also is the _document.js file, which we can add. Just like _app.js, _document.js has to be added in the pages folder, directly in the pages folder. Not in some subfolder, but in the root level of the pages folder. It's not there by default, but if you add it, Next.js will take it into account and will use it. But what does document.js do? App.js is your application shell. You can imagine app.js as the root component inside of the body section of your HTML document. Document.js allows you to customize the entire HTML document, so all the elements that make up an HTML document. If you need to do that, you can add the _document.js file, and then you need to add a special component in there. A class-based component, as it turns out, which you could name myDocument. And it has to be a class-based component because it must extend some component offered and provided by Next.js. For this, we need to add an import of document from next/document. So we need to extend document here, and therefore we need to use a class-based component. And then in this class-based component, we need to add a render method, like we do in class-based React components. And then here we return some JSX code. That also should be special JSX code with a very specific structure. For this, we need to import more components from next document, and those components are the HTML component, the head component, the main component, and the next script component. Very important, the head component, which we are importing here, is not the same head component as we import from next head. These are different components. Head from next head is imported to use it anywhere in your JSX code to adjust the head content of the rendered page. Head imported from next document should only be used in this special document component which we are building here. Now, with those components imported in the rendered JSX content here, we should return a JSX structure where we have the HTML element as a wrapper. Then we have the head element like this. And then we have a body HTML element. So no special component, but the standard body element. And inside of that main and next script like this. That is the default structure which you should add. And that's the default structure which the default document has if you don't override it. So if you override it, you want to recreate that structure. And you should also, of course, export the document as the default. Now, what could be reasons for overriding that default document? Well, if you want to configure the general document. For example, if you want to add the lang attribute on HTML and set this to en. If we don't do this and save everything and we reload, we see that there is no lang attribute on the rendered HTML element. If we do that, if we add lang and set this to en, or to whichever language applies to your page, then if we restart the dev server, which we need to do here once, if we reload the page thereafter, we see the lang attribute. So I needed to restart the server here for this to have an effect, but then we see that this is taken into account. We could also add other elements here to the body, like for example a div with an ID of overlays, like that. If we do that and save this, and we reload, we see in the body there is this div. Why might we want to do that? Well, this allows us to add HTML content outside of our application component tree. For example, for using those elements with React portals then. We could select this div with a React portal to portal our modals or overlays to this element. So having extra HTML elements which are outside of our application component tree can sometimes be useful. Because your Next.js application is in the end rendered by this main component, which you therefore must include, but adding extra elements can sometimes also be beneficial. And therefore, if you need to edit the overall HTML document, you can do this by adding such an _document.js file.